Welcome to Mike's house. I hope you all are looking for some good news because I've got more for you than I would imagine you could probably even contain because I am having a hard time containing the good news that I'm discovering in the scriptures. The good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. This Bible, this book right here is so full of promises, good news, truths that will just change your life, truths that are changing my life. It's amazing. And I'm really excited today. We're going to keep talking about this topic, this subject that, this teaching that we've been doing for weeks now. It's titled Looking to the Cross. And several weeks ago I had made the comment that the state of your life, the condition that your life is in right now, and I'm going to take that a little bit further today and say that the relationships, the way your relationships are, the way you treat people and people treat you back, is really a direct correlation to how you view the cross. And you might think, like, that's crazy. What are you talking about? I can't control how people view me or treat me, well, that's not entirely true. To a degree, you can influence and have an influence on how people treat you. It's not perfect because even Jesus was a perfect example, the perfect representation of God's love, and people still rejected him. But on a whole, in the big picture, when Jesus came into town, the multitudes flocked to him. People who were the vilest of sinners, people who were sick and destitute and just in dire need would flock to Jesus. Their needs would be met. People just loved him and worshiped him and adored him, and he literally impacted the world like no other human being ever has, because Jesus was fully God, fully man, and he was truly 100% God's love in the flesh. And that so impacted people. And in Timothy, in 1 Timothy and 2 Timothy, and even in Titus, Paul he tells these two young men, two young pastors, two men who were left to help raise up other leaders in two major cities in the early church. He instructed them on how to live, on how to be godly examples, on how to live a life in such a way that it would affect how people treated them. And that's amazing. And if we can take that same principle, and one of the things that Paul told Titus and Timothy, he said, you need to study the Word. You really need to be a student of the Word, and it matters how you live. It matters how you treat people. It matters. These things are so important, and you need to be a godly example. And if you do so, then you have a much better chance of people not despising you, not looking down on you, no matter how old you are, no matter what the color of your skin is, no matter what you've done in the past. If you can take these truths and begin to stand on them and let these truths come in and plant them in your heart like seeds and let them begin to grow and produce good fruit in your life, it will affect the people all around you. And I know this personally. I'm experiencing it personally. I'm experiencing the changes, and I'm experiencing the fruit of this in my life right now. And one of the questions that I brought up on Monday was this idea that what would a person look like before and after who had gotten a hold of these truths that, man, they were loved by God unconditionally, independent of their performance. They were 100% forgiven. They saw that God's grace, his unmerited favors, just poured out on their life, and that they have right standing with God as a free gift. And if they would just receive all this, what kind of a change would that produce in their family life, as a husband or a wife, as a father or a mother? What kind of change would that produce as a friend, as a brother, as a co-worker, as a business owner? What kind of change would come about if we would just take these truths in and let them begin to change us from the inside out? And I was talking Monday about some personal things with me, and I was sharing with you about a gentleman I met he just decided to start telling me about his work situation and his boss. And as this guy was talking about his boss, I was thinking, man, he's talking about how I used to be. this must have been how guys used to talk about me when they would go home. You know, this boss that they had was just so arrogant and angry and condescending and just thought he was all that. But, you know, and they would say all kind of profanities and use all kind of descriptive adjectives that I wouldn't dare use on this broadcast. And that was very common. But, you know, here lately, instead of me hearing from my boss these discouraging stories or reports where I'm having to have a meeting with my boss about how guys are saying this about me and saying that about me, and I realized a lot of it was because I was an individual that was placed into a position of leadership too early. And it was out of necessity. And at the time, you know, it looked like a good idea, and there really wasn't anybody else, and it seemed like the shoe fit, so, you know, I went with it. But boy, it has been a hard, hard road. And instead of me trusting the scriptures 100%, I was trusting previous experiences in my life, and I was trying to lead the way I'd seen other men in my life lead. And I found out that I had a lot of anger issues, a lot of resentment issues, a lot of unforgiveness. Fear was huge. A lot of the reasons I was yelling and screaming a lot and just barking orders was because I was scared. So if you yell a lot, you know, it's like a front, it's like a cover for being afraid. You know, you go make a lot of noise and then people get rattled and they think, oh man, that guy, you know, he's mean, and then you know, you're trying to portray yourself like a tough guy. But it didn't really work. It had limited results. You know, I was fairly successful in the way things were going. Jobs were getting done. You know, I was getting some compliments here and there, but the compliments were on the job getting done. But I really had kind of was working as, you know, the end justifies the means, and that's not really so, because a lot of people were hurt. A lot of people were discouraged along the way. A lot of people were tripped up on the gospel, because one minute I would be telling them about the Bible, the next minute I'm telling them basically how stupid they are, and, you know, that men, they're just worthless, and I can't believe you don't ever listen to me, and you don't do anything right, and just negative, 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 just tearing them down, tearing them down, tearing them down. But you know, when the Lord, back in June of 2012, when He really opened my eyes again to His love, His unconditional love, and from there I began to see that I was forgiven 100%, and I began to see His grace and this gift of righteousness in my life, and it just began to change me from the inside out. It really began to affect my work life in a profound way. You know, and some of the new guys that I've worked with over the last year and a half, where I work on different crews, with different crews from job to job sometime, and sometimes different crews even on the same job as new guys come in and go out. It has been amazing, the difference between the reports that my boss is getting now versus the reports he was getting before. People are requesting me. When they get assigned to a job, they want to go where I am. They want to work with me. And now some of the guys that they used to like working with, they don't want to go there. They want to come with me. And it is just amazing. It's an amazing change. I mean, and I know at work, it's not that that I still face the same challenges. I'm still working with the same types of people. The circumstances around me have not changed at all. But there's been a heart change. And I'm not perfect. I still mess up. I still lose my cool. I still sometimes talk down to people, but those things are they're fewer and far between. You know, it used to be daily. Now maybe there's an incident here and there within a week, or, you know, within a month. Is way better. And I'm enjoying my job so much more, and I'm just enjoying life way much more. But you know, one thing that I've learned is, and this happened to Jesus also, not everybody was happy that Jesus was here. Not everybody received all the good that Jesus had for them. And I've experienced in my own personal life that even as I change, and even as this good fruit is produced in my life, there are people that I've hurt. There are people that I've disappointed. There are people who I've broken their trust and lost their respect because of the way I acted, and the way I created stumbling blocks for them, Instead of, I may have been speaking words that were truths of the gospel, and I may have been speaking good news, but then my actions would cause those people to get tripped up, and they would get angry at me. There are people who, even right now, hold grudges against me. People who are still in my immediate life, people who I'm friends with, that it's difficult because they remember me before, and the changes that are happening, it's not like it was magical overnight, but these changes have been happening a little bit more each day, a little bit more each day, a little bit more each day. Some things are faster with some people than with others, and I found that that's a big challenge. That when you're dealing with people aren't quick to forgive, and you don't just get trust back. When you've broken trust, you don't just get it back automatically. People don't just move on as quickly as you'd like them to. But one thing I've learned, that if we just keep looking to the cross and seeing that in God's eyes we are 100% forgiven, He loves us unconditionally, that gets the guilt and the shame off. So even though I realize that with this person here and this person here, I've hurt them, no doubt about it, I'm guilty. And they're having a hard time forgiving me and having a hard time accepting that I've changed, because they're afraid that that old guy is going to show up. And unfortunately, in some of my closer circle of friends, they've seen changes, they've heard me talk, but then they've watched me go right back and fall back into acting sometimes like I used to, and that is very discouraging. And it does kind of trip things up. So people who meet me now for the first time experience a guy who's changed a lot, but the people who've known me for a long time and around me more, they see the new Mike, but they're also seeing sometimes some relapses. But I personally, and I encourage you too, keep looking to the cross. Keep looking. Look at that. Look at God's grace, His unmerited favor in your life. And know that you are blessed and you are prosperous, not because you're a hard worker, not because you do everything right, not because you deserve it, but because of what Jesus did on the cross. And if you're not born again, I encourage you. You're hearing the gospel. You're hearing about Jesus. And if you will accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, and the Bible says that if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, and you believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, you shall surely be saved. It is that simple. Jesus died on that cross to take our place, to take the punishment for our sin, so that we could take His righteousness. What an amazing trade. Our sin Jesus takes it and says, here, you take my righteousness. Now you get the standing with God that I have. And you can't earn it. You can't work for it. You can't be obedient enough. You can't go to church enough. You can't do enough. You can't give enough. You just receive it. And if we receive this gift of righteousness, this abundance of grace, Romans 5:17 says we will reign in life. And like Paul was teaching Timothy and Titus, if we'll get into these truths and let them and plant them in our heart, they will begin to produce in our life. And we'll begin to see fruit. And we'll begin to be godly examples. And we'll be, like it says in 2 Timothy 2, it says that we can be a vessel that's fit fully for God's use. God will use us wherever we are. But the more we get these truths into our heart, and the more we begin to believe right, we're able to live right. We're able to live more rightly. The more we believe right, the more we'll live right. And it is a powerful thing. It's just about taking these truths and these promises, writing them, planting them in our heart, and the change, it's just going to come. It's coming in my life so fast and exponentially. I mean, it started off, it seemed gradual, but it's just going and going and going and going. It's amazing. And I'm just so excited for what kind of changes I'm going to experience this week. The situations that I remember how I used to act before, I'm just amazed. Even sometimes I'm listening to myself like I'm watching, and I'm going, is that really me? Am I really reacting that way? Man, God is awesome. And He loves you and He loves me unconditionally. And I'm going to keep telling you that from Mike's house. I'm glad you're listening. I'm glad you're joining us. Come back next week. I got more good news for you. This book is an endless supply of good news. And God bless you all.